Okay, welcome everybody. This is Jay Early. This is a webinar on Self-Therapy Journey. I'm the creator of Self-Therapy Journey. So I want to just point out that there is a chat function that's associated with this webinar. There's a little bit of a delay. I think it's a 20 or 30-second delay between when you type in your chats and when I actually see them. But so right now, let's just make sure that everything's working. So, I see. There's just, looks like I must have started a little early. Looks like I just have 2 people on so far. So people are just starting to arrive. So I think I'll wait a little bit until a few more people arrive before I go on. But for the 2 of you who are here, let me know how things are by using the chat function. Like, can you hear me clearly? Can you see me okay? Can you see the screen? Just let me know if there are any problems, how things are working. Just before I actually get going, I want to make sure that things are working properly with all the technology, which last week didn't work too well. Okay, so anyway, I guess I'll go ahead now. So let me just explain that, give you a little of my background. So I'm a psychologist. I've actually been a psychotherapist for about 40 years, and about 12 years ago, I guess it was, I discovered internal family systems therapy, IFS. And actually, let me just switch over here so that you're now seeing the slideshow. So IFS is a really powerful, effective, and user-friendly form of psychotherapy that I started using about 12 years ago in about 2002, and found that it was so powerful and so effective for my clients and for myself in terms of using it to work on myself, that I switched over from what I had been doing, and IFS is pretty much all I do now, even though, of course, my therapy work is informed by all of the 40 years that I've been doing therapy. IFS was created by Richard Schwartz, PhD, and there are many training programs all over the country where people learn how to use IFS, where therapists learn it. And I got so interested in it that I not only assisted with some of the professional trainings, but I also started teaching courses in how to use IFS to work on yourself and to do IFS peer counseling with other people in the course. And those eventually those were really effective, and I found that many people really could do IFS on their own. And so I wrote a book based on the 2 main courses on IFS, and that book is called Self-Therapy. And I hope there's not a delay in when you can see these slides. Anyway, there may be. Oh well. Anyway, Self-Therapy is a manual for doing IFS, both for therapists and for the general public. And it has been very successful. There have been about 18,000 copies sold, despite the fact that it's a self-published book. So I've been very happy with that. And in addition, I frequently get emails from people all over the country and all over the world, actually, telling me what a big difference self-therapy and IFS has made in their lives. So it's been very satisfying. In addition to my interest in IFS, I've also written a bunch of other books on IFS, both professional books and non-professional. I'm just, by the way, for those of you who just joined, I'm giving you my background. Some chats here. No delay. Slideshow clearly on time. Great. Okay, all is well. Great. And there's no delay. That's wonderful. Okay. So, I've also developed something called the pattern system, which you can almost think of as a periodic table for psychology. It's a detailed, organized system for understanding psychology of personality. And it includes patterns, which are problematic ways of being and relating, capacities, which are healthy ways of being and relating, and wounds, which are the things that happen to us in the past, usually in childhood, to cause difficulties that lead to patterns instead of capacities. And I've been developing the pattern system gradually over the last 30 years, and I discovered that it was just a really natural integration with IFS. And so the two of them, I've been developing some extensions of IFS based on the pattern system and using the pattern system with IFS. Basically, the the pattern system is the content of of psychology, and IFS provides a really powerful therapeutic process. So the two of them work well together. So what I've developed, which I'm going to be demonstrating today, is a web application called Self Therapy Journey, in which you can go online and log in and work on yourself psychologically and explore your issues and do deep psychological healing and behavior change. IFS is based on both, Self Therapy Journey is based on both IFS and the pattern system. And there are many different patterns, capacities, and wounds from the pattern system that are in Self Therapy Journey. So in this webinar today, before I get to that, let me just tell you a little bit more about me. I have three passions that come into this work. One is to bring IFS to the world. IFS, I feel like it's such a powerful and user-friendly form of therapy that I really want it to be as widespread as possible. Let's see, somebody says I have a blank screen and no sound. I would suggest trying to call back in again on the same link, which takes you into Webinar Jam and Google Hangouts, and see if maybe it'll work this time. The second thing I'm really excited about is bringing the pattern system to the world. It feels like I've developed a new, more organized and more detailed system for understanding personality and psychology than anything that's out there, and I'm really excited for everybody to learn about it. And the third thing is I want to bring Self Therapy Journey to the world because I feel like it has the potential to reach a much larger number of people than will go to therapy or can afford therapy or things, It basically brings the power of therapy to a much wider number of people, so I'm very excited about doing that. So let's go on. So in this webinar, in a few minutes, I'm going to do a short guided meditation with you to help you access what in IFS is called the self, which is a place of being grounded and centered and open. And then I'm going to give you a lot of information about Self Therapy Journey, and I'm actually going to demonstrate how to use it. I'm actually going to show you on the screen what it looks like as if I were an STJ user and a Self Therapy Journey user. I'm going to go through most of the pages of Self Therapy Journey and really show you how it works. And then I'll also talk about additional resources that are available. Okay, so right now what I'd like to do is take you through a short guided meditation. So please sit in a comfortable position for a guided meditation. For most people, that's sitting relaxed but upright. Close your eyes. Go inside. and focus your attention on your body sensations. Notice whatever sensations you're aware of in your body. You might notice maybe a tingling in your hands, or a little pressure behind your eyes. Or you might notice maybe a fullness in your belly. Or anything else. So just whatever sensations you are aware of in each moment, in this moment, just whatever sensation you're aware of, just be present with that sensation. And if you notice your mind wandering away from the present, away from your body, just gently bring it back with no judgment. Just continue to be present in each moment with whatever sensations you're aware of in that moment. They may be different from whatever you noticed a few minutes ago. And as you do that, you may find yourself, excuse me, you may find yourself relaxing a little more, going into a deeper place inside. And now notice if there are any recurring thoughts that keep coming back, or you might have some emotion that's coming up or that's been up, or you might have some body sensation that indicates that some part of you is activated. If you notice any of those things, that may indicate that a part of you is activated. A part is a subpersonality, something in you that maybe needs a little attention. It's IFS basically works with parts. So I'm going to just have you check to see. You might have a part that's a little anxious about how to do the guided meditation. You may have a part that's distracted and thinking about something in your life. You may have a part that's judging you right now. Whatever it might be. Maybe you have a part that's feeling excitement and interest. So just notice if there are any parts, or you might just be feeling calm and centered, which was the point of the first part of the meditation. If you're feeling calm and centered or something like that, that's not considered a part in IFS, that's the self. But if you're noticing anything else, take a moment to focus on whatever part you're aware of. Notice how you feel it in your body. Notice how that part feels emotionally. You might even notice if with your eyes closed, if you see an image of what that part looks like. And then just ask the part what it's concerned about or what it's feeling. And just wait and notice what sort of response you get from the part. It might be a response in words inside, or it might just be a feeling response. Just take a moment to be with that part. And just let it know that you're here too, in self. That whatever this part's concerned about, you're here to help deal with it. And see if that helps the part to maybe relax a little and leave you space to be even more in self, to be more grounded and calm and open and curious. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. Maybe the part isn't ready to relax. That's fine. And then notice if there are any other parts that might be activated right now. And if there's another one, then take a moment to focus on that part too. And to find out what it's feeling or what it's concerned about. And see if that part, you can also reassure that part that you're here, and see if that part can also relax. And if there's any other parts, do the same with them. So if you didn't have any parts that were activated, or if they have all relaxed, then you're probably in self. And so just take a moment to feel what that's like. Feel what it's like in your body, feel what that state of consciousness is like, and enjoy it. And if one or more of your parts wasn't ready to relax, then that's okay too. Just notice what it's like to have that part activated and blended with you. And that might be a part that you might want to do some IFS work on at some point. Okay. So gradually now bring yourself back to the group. Gradually beginning to come back from the deeper place you've been in. Maybe moving around a little, beginning to open your eyes, and come back to the webinar. So I noticed that one person has given me the feedback that the person who had a blank screen downloaded Google Chrome, and that worked for her. So if anybody's having difficulties, you might try switching to Chrome. This should work on other things, but since this is run through Google Hangouts and Chrome is also from Google, I suppose Google products work better with each other. So, okay, so if anybody feels like sharing anything through chat about what happened in your guided meditation, feel free to do that. And I can share it with people if you want. Okay. The other thing that I want to do is show you hold on just a second. I'm trying to get something to work here, and it's not quite working. Maybe do I have to turn the chat? I think I have to turn the chat off, do I? That's funny. Oh, there we go. Okay, now you should be able to see little thing on the right-hand corner on the right side of your screen. So if you feel like checking out Self-Therapy Journey, there's a link where you can do that. I hope that doesn't interfere with the chat. If it does, let me know. I can switch back and forth. I don't know what you guys say. I'm still learning this. This webinar stuff is still fairly new for me. Okay, so let's go on. So let me go to the next slide. Let me talk a little bit more about Self-Therapy Journey. So it's some of the advantages of Self-Therapy Journey. It's inexpensive, a tiny fraction of the cost of therapy. It's only $25 a month, and you can even try it out for free for 2 weeks. It allows you to take charge of your own inner work, allows you to do it on your own time at your own convenience. You can do it in complete privacy if you want, although you can also, and I encourage people who want to find a buddy in our online community and have somebody who's working with you on it. It's more personal and interactive than a self-help book. It helps you to keep your work on track because everything, you get customized reports on everything, and everything you do is tracked and ends up in the reports. By the way, if anything comes up, any questions people have, feel free to pop them in with the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. I love to have questions. I love to answer them. So, some of the things you can do with Self-Therapy Journey, you can discover, you may know some issues that you want to work on. You probably do, but you can also discover other issues that you need to work on, because we have a number of different quizzes that you can take. You can explore a particular pattern to understand how it works for you, what you feel and think when it's happening, where it comes from, what the underlying psychodynamics of it are, where it comes from in childhood. You can be led through doing an IFS session with one of your parts. You can heal your wounded inner child parts, which are called exiles in IFS. You can explore the healthy capacities that you might want to develop instead of your problematic patterns. You can set up and track a real-time practice or a set of practices to help change your behavior. And Self-Therapy Journey can help you to eventually develop a complete psychological profile for yourself. So somebody's saying that, sharing that they, oh, I guess in the meditation, they were in touch with some deep anger and resentments, but not too close to the surface. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. Some of the options with Self-Therapy Journey, you can do it on your own or as an adjunct to therapy or counseling that you might be in. You can do it by yourself or with a buddy, which can be a friend of yours or somebody you discover in our online community. You can focus on insight, on deep psychological healing, on behavior change, or all of the above. You can join our online community. I also provide a lot of personal support of various kinds for Self-Therapy Journey. And you can even take a course that helps introduce you to Self-Therapy Journey, usually a course around a specific topic. Okay. Oh, I don't go there next. Okay. So now I'm going to start demonstrating Self-Therapy Journey. So let me do a little switch here. I'm now going to switch to, okay, here we go. Oh, actually, let me start with the home page. That'll be better. Okay, so this is the home page for Self-Therapy Journey. You can see, let me just, there we go. So if I scroll down, you know, here's some descriptions. There's a quiz you can take. There's some testimonials, some more stuff. Here's a short video of me talking about it. Here's some information about the pattern system in IFS, and so on. That's the home page. You can take a look at it. You don't need to see it now. Self-therapy journey allows you to deal with a whole wide variety of issues. Here are some of them listed here: anger, judgmentalness, blah, blah. You can read them. I won't read through them, but there's a bunch of them, and there's even more than that. And in addition to that, there are also, oh, you know what I should do? Let me go over here. On this page, here's where you can take quizzes. So you can click on this and you can actually take a quiz that looks like that. This is our interpersonal patterns quiz. You can answer all these questions and then click here and you will get, I've already answered these, so I just kind of scrolled through, but you can click here and this will show you the results here of the scores you got for various patterns, and then for each one you can click here to learn more about it and to actually work on it in STJ if you want. So let's go back. It's not going to go back, is it? Let's go back here. Okay, so let's go back to this page. Okay, so that's the quizzes, and then here is actually a list of all the patterns that are in self-therapy journey right now. The angry pattern, caretaking, conflict avoiding, controlling, defensive. You can see the whole list here. There's 23 here at the moment. And in addition to that, we'll go back here. Oops. And there's also a list of the healthy capacities that you can work on developing. Aliveness, assertiveness, being centered, being able to challenge people, clarity, conscious consumption, cooperation, courage, ease, and so on. So there's a list of all the healthy capacities. So you, and then you can also, so you can decide through various means. Let's say you decided, you go through all these and you decide, okay, I've chosen a pattern to work on to start with. And so you, I'll just go there. Let's suppose that you've got an eating issue that you tend to either overeat or be, overly concerned about food in one way or another. So in the pattern system, this is the indulger pattern, and so you can choose to work on that. I'll just use that as an example because all the patterns are set up similarly, so this will be a good example. So I'm just going to, so on the first page here, you can see that there's a description of the indulger pattern, and each pattern has a short little false belief that many people that have that pattern have. So this describes what it's like to have the indulger pattern. And then you can go to the, by the way, let me just show you the way self-therapy journey works. You can see here we're in the intro stage here. And there are 5 pages in this stage. We're on the first page, which is the description. And we can go to the next page, which is, you can actually click here to read a story of someone with the indulger pattern. So you can read this to learn, one person's story who has the pattern. Of course, your story might be quite different, but it gives you at least a flavor for what the pattern's like. And we can go to the next page by clicking on Next, or by clicking on over here in the left column. Then the next page is Triggers. And this basically, so let me explain. If you have a pattern like the indulger pattern, it's probably not triggered all the time. You're probably not tempted to overeat all the time. It's probably under certain circumstances, like when a lot of food is around. Or so you can actually scroll through here and it has a list of typical situations that trigger people's indulger patterns. Holidays, advertising about food, late at night watching TV, being bored, etc. So you can click off whichever of these situations tend to trigger your indulger pattern, or you can add your own. You can click here and type in I'll just type in some other situation. And you can see that that got added to the list. So you can add, and this is the way all the these checklists work. So that there's also might be certain types of people that tend to trigger your tendency to overread. If so, you can check off those, or there might be specific people. If so, you can check those off. And these will all end up in a customized report that you get on your indulger pattern. Now, these first 5 pages are just a little beginning to help you just get an idea of whether you think that you have this pattern enough that you'd actually like to work on it. And so, if you do, and here's where you can make that decision. If you decide you don't need this here, you go back and look for another one. If you do, you click here, and you will notice that up top here, this has now moved us from the intro stage to stage 1. Stage 1 is where you explore the your pattern. Whoops. Oh my goodness, I set this wrong. Notice that it says inner critic pattern up here. You know why that is? That's because I didn't start at the beginning. The last pattern I was on was the inner critic pattern. I'm just going to fix that. Hold on, let me just go back and start. Let's see. Oh, I know. I probably have to go back here. Why is this not switching? That's strange. All right, I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to start at the beginning with the indulger pattern. So if I start here, and then click here, there we go. Now you see that the things at the top are correct. Now it says indulger pattern for stage 1. Okay, that's what I wanted. So now we're here, and I'm going to actually go into stage 1, where I'm going to explore the indulger pattern in more detail. So the first one is a list of, this is basically different types of behavior. So you get to explore what form does your reading take. I stand in front of the refrigerator eating without remembering how I got there. I wake up in the morning and find evidence of eating, but I don't remember doing it, etc. I obsess about what I'm going to eat that night, etc. I try to control my urges, but then I just give up and eat, and so on. So you can click on whatever of these. So you get to explore a little more detail exactly what form your eating issue takes. And of course, this would be the same for any pattern you're exploring. If it was people pleasing or controlling or inner critic or anything else, and you can add your own too. So I can add my own. I'm just going to pop something in here. I can just add something here, and that will show up on the list. And we'll go to the next one. So that's a way of exploring what your behavior is like. Now the next page, we start to get into stuff that's related to IFS. So remember, I've mentioned that IFS deals with parts, which are subpersonalities. So if you overeat, you probably have a part that leads you to overeat. It's an indulger part. But everybody's indulger part is unique. It's, even though it falls into the indulger category, everybody's is a unique, and you want to get to know your part in particular. And so to begin with, you can choose a name for it, or if you actually have done some IFS work on it, you already may know what this part is named. So maybe I'll call mine the feeder. So, and of course, if these names don't fit, you can choose your own. So you can click your choice of name and type in your own. So you don't have to choose, and you never have to choose error options. You always have your own. Now the next thing is you can choose an image of what your indulger part looks like. So we have a bunch of clip art here that you can choose from. So maybe it feels like your indulger is trying to help you to feel loved. So maybe I'll click that. Maybe that's what my indulger part looks like. And these are all going to end up in a report. So then in the next page, if you listen inside, or if you listen, you can think of it as statements that your indulger part makes, or you can also just think of it as thoughts. What do you hear inside when your indulger is activated? I'm hungry. I need to take care of myself. This is all I have. I have to block things out. So you could check a few of these. I need this. This will make me feel better. This will not make me feel. This will make me not feel anything. So I'll check a few of those. You can add your own. We'll go on to the next. And now it gets interesting, because now you can do a guided meditation. So in IFS, IFS is an experiential therapy. It's not just thinking about parts. In IFS, you actually can go inside and access in this case, your indulger part through a little bit similar to the way you may have accessed some parts on the guided meditation that we did at the beginning. But you'll be accessing this part and getting to know it and finding out what it's trying to do for you. Now, turns out that these first parts we're working with are what are called protectors in IFS. And even though a protector may be causing you problems, like causing you to be overweight or overly obsessed with food, it's actually doing that in order to try to help you or protect you from pain in some way, or get you something that it feels you need. And so one of the things you do, so this guided meditation takes you through what you might think of as the first half of an IFS session, where you get to know a protector and find out about its positive intent and develop a trusting relationship with it. And so that's what this meditation does. It's a substantial meditation, like 25 or 30 minutes, where you really do some deep beginning work on getting to know, not only getting to know your indulger part, but finding out some of the underlying psychodynamics behind it, which you can think of as the motivation for your part. Like, what is it trying to do by eating? Okay, so let's go on to the next page. Now you get to actually explore. So the underlying motivations for a part, I'm going to call motivations, the underlying psychodynamics. And so here, and you may have discovered these by doing the guided meditation, hopefully you did, or by reading through this checklist of possible motivations for overeating. By the way, many of these motivations are not conscious or are not fully conscious, so you may not be aware of these at first, but through doing the meditation or by reading this list, you may start to become aware, oh, this is probably what's going on. So you can read, so you can see I've checked some of these, like I want to, so these are why are you eating? I want to soothe a part of me that's feeling lonely, empty, and needy. I want to soothe a part of me that's feeling hurt and rejected. So there's a bunch of soothe possibilities. I'm afraid that I won't get enough to eat. I'm afraid of being rejected. So you can see I want to distract myself from feeling socially uncomfortable. So you can see there's lots of different potential underlying motivations for eating, and you can, or overeating, I should say. And by the way, these are the problematic motivations. There may be healthy motivations for eating or for any other pattern you have. But those you don't need to explore. Those are fine. This is a way of exploring the problematic ones because that will lead to the work you need to do. Okay, so we'll go on to the next page. Now, one of the interesting things, the psyche is not simple. The psyche is complex. We all have complexity in our psychology. And so even though, and that's one of the reasons, so even though self-therapy journey and the pattern system are set up so that you work on one pattern at a time, which helps you to stay focused and move ahead and not get lost in all the different things that might be going on inside, there's also a recognition in self-therapy journey that that's not all there is. So one of the recognitions is what I call colluding patterns. These are also called allied patterns in IFS, allied parts, I should say. So that if you have, that you might have patterns, your indulger pattern might actually be working in conjunction with other patterns, or they might be working in conjunction with it. So for example, you might have a foggy pattern that causes you to space out and lose track of what you're doing so you don't notice how much you're eating. If you've got that, you may need to work on your foggy pattern in addition to your indulger pattern in order to work through your eating issues. Or you might have a rebel pattern where you rebel against another part of you or against other people who are trying to limit your eating. And that may be part of the reason that you overeat. So you might have to work on that pattern. So on this page, it gives you a chance to check off any patterns that you think might be colluding patterns to your indulgers. So let's see what happens. If I check off the foggy pattern, you see there's a link here. So I could now go off and explore the foggy pattern and decide if I actually want to work on that. And if I did want to work on it, I could put it on a to explore list, and then I could come back and go on, or I could even decide, oh, I want to change. I'm actually going to go work on that now, and then I'll come back later and continue where I left off working on the indulger pattern. So you have some options. It's generally a good idea, however, not to go too far off onto other patterns unless you really feel like that's more important, because I've had feedback from some people that they kind of got lost with all the different options and all the different places they could go. Hold on just a second, I need to take a drink of water. Anyway, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm not going to go off in that direction. Well, actually, let me just show you. So if I clicked here, here's a description of the foggy pattern. So I can click here to put it on the to explore list for later. I can click here to explore it now, or I can just close the page, come back here, and go on. So the next page is where you can explore how this pattern might influence the way you interact with other people. That's a little more sophisticated. I think I'm going to skip over that right now. It's a little much more detailed than we need to get into. So let me go to the next page. Now here is you're almost at the end of stage 1, where you've done a detailed exploration of your indulger pattern or whatever pattern you might be working on. By the way, I'm just using indulger as an example. Anybody who's showed up late, this is not a webinar about overeating. I'm just using this as an example of one pattern of 23 different patterns that you could work on in using self-therapy journey. So this now is your report. So as you can see, it's now got here all the things that I checked off. Here's the things that trigger it. Here's the colluding pattern I checked here. Here's the behaviors and feelings. There's the name, the image, the statements, the motivations, and so on. This is something that you can only come back to after you do it later. So here's a report on your indulgent pattern, and while you're reading it, you can add stuff to it if you want. Then you can print it out here at the bottom, or you can just leave it here and access it from a smartphone or a tablet whenever you want to. So, and now we're now at the end of stage one, and you can imagine if you've really gone through this and done guided meditation, this will probably take an hour to an hour and a half. And so this is probably all you'd want to do in one sitting. And so here's a good point. I give a little homework here where you can work on being aware of when your indulger pattern is triggered during your life, and then come back and probably continue at another time. However, for this demonstration, of course, I'm going to go on and show you all the stages. However, let me stop here and ask if there's any questions that have come up so far. So if there are, please type them into your chat, and I will be happy to respond to them. And I suspect that this may be where the 20-second delay is. So I'm going to, I guess I'm going to go, I don't see any chats coming up right now, but that probably means that that's because of the delay. So I'm just going to wait a second to see if any chats come up, and you can tell I'm grabbing a little bite to eat while I'm doing that. Well, I don't see any, so maybe nobody has anything they need to ask about. So let's go on. So this link here takes us back to the stage sequence. That's the sequence of these 5 stages. Here's the thing. Just finished a therapy session with a client and feeling ineffectual in the session. Okay. The focus of your web screen keeps fading in and out. I don't know what I can do about that. Sorry. No, I've got it set. So it's solidly on there. I don't know what to do about that. Sorry. If anybody else is having the same problem, let me know. So now this is the beginning of stage 2. Stage 2 is where you get to work on the childhood origins of your pattern, whatever it might be. In this case, it's indulger. All these stages have a little video with me explaining what it's about, so you can read those. So now, remember in stage 1, we checked off the different motivations for your indulger. So each of those motivations is actually related to something underlying. Those are called wounds in the pattern system, and they're called exiles in IFS. Or you can think of wounds as being tight, if you know IFS. By the way, I should say exiles are wounded inner child parts, for those who don't know IFS. There are 2 basic types of parts in IFS. Protectors, which try to keep us from feeling pain or keep us from being hurt in our lives in various ways. The indulger is actually a protector. And then there are exiles that are wounded inner child parts that carry pain or trauma from childhood. And the wounds correspond to types of exiles, or if you know IFS, types of burdens, actually, that exiles can have, to be more precise. Here's an interesting question. How do we know we're being honest with ourselves when exploring a pattern? Very interesting question. Well, I guess what you're saying is that you could, in IFS terms, you could be blended with a protector that doesn't want you to really know what's going on, and so it keeps you from being honest with yourself, from really knowing. One way to do that would be, if you have a sense that that might be going on, you might explore some of the types of protectors that might do that, like the foggy pattern, for example, is something that might keep you from knowing what's going on. But more generally, I would think the best thing to do would be just to have the awareness that you actually have, the person who wrote this. By the way, I'm not going to use people's names just to preserve your confidentiality, because this, of course, is being recorded and will be seen by other people. So that's why I'm not using anybody's names. Um, anyway, I'm glad that you're aware of that possibility. That's great, and I think that's the best thing, the possibility that you might not be being completely honest with yourself. Oh, the other thing is, of course, by exploring these motivations and wounds, you're actually digging into the things that people might not want to be honest with themselves about. And so as you get further into it, you'll either get a sense of, yeah, this really feels right, this feels like I'm getting at the real issues, or if you have the feeling that you're not, that somehow the wounds you're exploring don't really seem to be getting at the underlying issues, or something's missing, then that would be a clue that maybe when you went through stage one, you weren't being completely honest. So maybe you need to go back again and look at um, some of the pages again. So you can always just scroll to the top, whoops, and click back on stage one. You can go, these are links, they'll take you back to any stage you want. So you can always go back and just explore again and see what you might have missed because some part of you didn't want you to see it. Okay, so getting back to here, notice that every one of the motivations that I checked off, by the way, these aren't necessarily my motivations, I just kind of checked these off as a way of using this to demonstrate. I do have a mild indulgent pattern, but it's something that I've mostly worked through. It used to be a much bigger problem for me in the past. So these don't correspond to my motivations, but just ones that are good to demonstrate how this works. So notice one of them was, I want to soothe a part of me that's feeling lonely, empty, and needy. That actually is one of my motivations for eating, although it's not such a big one anymore. And that corresponds to the need wound. Same with, I'm afraid I won't get enough to eat. I'm afraid of being rejected if I don't eat a lot. That corresponds to the rejection wound. This one corresponds to the unlovable wound, and so on. So you can look through this and choose one of these wounds that looks like, to start with, you can actually work on all of them eventually. All the ones that correspond to the ones you checked off, which won't be the same as these. But you'll do them one at a time. So let's suppose you decide to work on need wound. So you'll click here, and this takes you to stage 2 proper for the need wounds. So you see now that we're in stage 2 up here, and over on the left side, we got a whole nother step sequence. That's what this is called, a sequence of pages, a sequence of steps that help you to explore the need wound. So the first one just kind of tells you what's going on and gives you an option. Oh, by the way, I guess I should mention that there's various kinds of help available. You can, if you're getting emotions that are coming up too strongly, you can click a page for self-soothing help, which is also over here on the right side. If you have defenses coming up, so you're feeling spaced out, distracted, bored, uncomfortable, or other things like that, you can click here to get help with that. You can get support from us around technical issues or including navigation, and so on. So there's help available, and you can also ask me for help if you want, if something comes up, and so on. But let me go on and not get lost here. So the next page describes the need wound, So this describes what it feels like when you have the knee wound. Now, the thing to understand is that wounds are often somewhat unconscious. And so this is going to describe what it feels like when you're actually in touch with your knee wound. But remember, the indulger pattern may be a way of keeping you from feeling this knee wound. So you may or may not be, or whatever pattern you're working on. So you may or may not actually be fully in touch with what this wound feels like. But this gives you a chance to check in and see if this feels right, or it may actually help you to get in touch with what this underlying wound feels like. Let's see, I've got another chat here. It wasn't clear to me what you should do if, for example, your foggy part doesn't let you think about it. Oh, okay, so good question, thank you. So what you would do then is work on the foggy pattern directly. So instead of trying to work on the indulger pattern, go back to that original list of patterns, click on the foggy pattern, and start working on that. So even though it may be hard to work on that because you may be feeling foggy while you're doing it, at least you'll be working directly on the issue that's making you feel foggy, which will make it much more likely that you'll actually be able to be successful at working on it. For example, the guided meditation, if you're feeling foggy, that's fine because that's what you're focused on. Okay, so let's go to next. So that was the description. Now this is a page where you can explore wounds so if you're working in the knee wound, there are wounds that are somewhat similar to it. The closest one is the abandonment wound. So you can look at that and you might say, you know what, I thought it was the knee wound, but I really think that in my case, what I have underlying the indulging is the abandonment wound. So you can switch over and work on that one if you want. So this gives you an option to say, well, I think this wound is better, but for most people, you're probably in the right place, so we'll go on. So now, just like patterns can be triggered under certain circumstances, so can wounds. So here is, you can check off a few of these that give you different situations that tend to trigger your knee wound. Maybe when you're around distant people, your knee wound gets triggered, and so on. So that's an exploration you can do. And then when your knee wound is triggered, sometimes wounds, exiles are exiled. You know, that's why they're called exiles, because they're hidden away sometimes. But sometimes they're not, and sometimes they actually affect your behavior. So in the case where your knee wound is actually affecting the way you relate to people or the way you behave, if that's the case, you can check off some of these or check off your own. So this is a way of exploring how the wound shows up in your life. And then the next page, you can actually explore the feelings of the wound. Like, how do you feel when your knee wound is triggered? I feel clingy, I feel empty, I feel needy, I feel hungry, and so on. You can check off whichever of those fit. And then, just like wounds are parts, just like or correspond to exiles, which are parts, just like patterns correspond to protectors, which are parts. So you can choose a name for your the exile that corresponds to your knee wound. So let's say I'm going to call it Lonely One, and then you can choose an image, just like before. Oh, the thing I didn't mention is you don't have to choose one of our images. You can go down here and you can upload your own image from your computer, or you can even go to Google Images and find one that you like there, download it to your computer, and then upload it here. Or you can, if none of that works, you can even, and you have an image of your part, you can type in the description of it here. So let's go on. Now, your knee wound probably comes from childhood, or comes from your past anyway. It could be in adulthood. Most wounds come from childhood. So this gives you an opportunity to actually explore where this came from in childhood. So there's 3 pages that allow you to do this. The first one corresponds to something that someone, usually a parent, but it doesn't have to be a parent, so how you were treated by someone or not treated that led you to have the need wound. So you can choose mother, father, stepfather, parent, sibling, etc., etc. You could choose one or more of these people who may have treated you in a certain way that led you to have a knee wound. Here, but you can put in a specific, like if you didn't call her mother, if you called her mama, you can put that in here. And then you click here, and now here's a page where you can actually explore what happened. What did she do or not do? She didn't feed me well or consistently. She didn't express love. She abandoned me, etc. So you could click off whatever of those are one. What did she say to me? Leave me alone. Can't you see I'm busy? When did this happen? Under what circumstances did the mother do this? When she was busy, when she was tired, when she was depressed. So you could check off any of those, and these will all end up in your need wound report. So I notice I closed the page because I was finished, and now if I wanted to do another person, I could click here and do that exploration for another person. But I won't do that since I'm doing a demo here. Now you can also, sometimes your need wound may have come through a situation, not through a specific person. So maybe I spent some of my young years in maybe in an orphanage where I wasn't nurtured adequately, or maybe my family was poor, so I often felt deprived. You can check off whichever of those fit, or you can put in your own situation. And then the third possibility is that you got this wound as what is in IFS is called a legacy burden, which means that you got this wound not because of anything that was done to you or not done to you, but you got it through osmosis, so to speak, or as an inheritance from one of your parents. So maybe one of your parents had a knee wound, and you picked it up from them. So let's say, suppose your father had a knee wound. You have a sense of that. Well, actually, I've already done here for mother, so let me just click here. You can also use this to review a previous page. So let's suppose your mother, you know what, I'm not going to go through all the details. It'll take too long. But basically, you can explore here how your mother felt, how you know that your mother felt that way, and that gives you a sense of how you got your knee wound as a legacy from your mother. And then you can also do a guided meditation on with your knee wound exile. So this page takes you to another recorded guided meditation for this particular kind of exile, in which you go inside and do an experiential IFS session where you connect with the needy exile and you actually go in and do the healing steps from IFS. You reparent the exile, like with the needy exile. You become the good parent that exile needed, or that's one possibility. You can nurture the exile, give the exile your love, so that the exile feels nurtured and taken care of by you. That's just an example of what you can do in the reparenting step. Then there's also retrieval, where you can take the exile out of a painful situation of the past and bring it into your heart or bring it into your current life. And then there's also an unburdening step where you can help the exile to release the pain or trauma or negative beliefs that it's carrying, so that it gets to feel whole and good about itself and can assume its natural, happy way of being. So that's a guided meditation that takes you through healing an exile that has a knee wound. And those are also pretty extensive guided meditations, like 30 minutes or even 35 minutes. So you do have to do some really deep work here. And then here is just like with the stage 1 with a pattern, you get a need wound report of all the things you checked off in your. Oh, by the way, let me just mention, there's also for any, you can take notes, not just here, but any in any of these places, there's a thing where you can take notes and you can just jot a little something here, or if you like to journal, you can do extensive journaling here around your knee wound, and that will all end up in your knee wound report, or the same with the pattern. If you do it there, you'll end up in your indulger pattern report, or whatever pattern you're doing with them. And so that's your knee wound report. And there's one more page here. Each wound also has a healthy capacity that helps to resolve it. And so in the case of the knee wound, the healthy capacity is self-support. Each pattern also has a healthy capacity that resolves it, but that'll be different. Like for the indulger pattern, the healthy capacity is conscious consumption. For the need wound, the healthy capacity that resolves it is self-support, of course, because if you're needy and empty, what you need is to feel that you can support yourself. Excuse me just a second, I'm taking another little bite of something. Okay, so that is, and so this gives you information about this healthy capacity, and it gives you the option, if you want, to click here, get a further description of it, and if you want to actually work on developing that capacity, you can click here to mark that to be explored in the future, or if you even feel like it's really important to switch here, I wouldn't do this lightly, but if you really feel it would be more important to switch and work on developing that now, you can do that here. And then I should say that if you do switch off at any of these points and go off to work on developing another capacity or work on another pattern, the system saves a restart point. And in your dashboard, you can find all your restart points, and you can go back to wherever you were when you went off and worked on a different wound or a different capacity. But again, don't do that lightly, because you can end up going all over the place and not finishing. So it's good to, as much as possible, stay on the track that you're on. And that's why we have this ability to put this on the to explore list, so you can do it later. So I'll close this now. Takes me back to this page, and then we'll finally go to the last page of stage 2, which is just a little interlude page. And again, this is probably going to be the end of your second session. In fact, it might even be more than, it might even take 2 sessions to go through stage 2. So I recommend that you not try to do too much in one stage. Take a break. There's a little homework you can work on here. Come back to it later. And by the way, the other thing I want to mention is that I really recommend, you know, one of the advantages, one of the minor advantages, but the advantages of being in therapy is that you have to schedule sessions with your therapist, and so you don't avoid them. When you're doing self-therapy journey, you don't have that. So, and because you're doing psychological work on potentially painful stuff, there may be parts of you that will want to avoid doing the work. And so I really recommend each time you finish a session, an STJ session, that you schedule yourself for when you're going to do the next session. Put it on your calendar, and so you decided when you're going to do it next, so it makes it much more likely that you're going to do it. And if you have a buddy, tell your buddy, I'm going to do my next session next Tuesday at 7 o'clock, and maybe even make plans to either have your buddy with you when you do it, or talk to your buddy at some time after the session. That will also help you to stay accountable for doing the work. Okay. So, let's see now. I'm checking my chat stuff. Okay, so let's see. Here's a question. What if you can't remember specific examples of what she did to you, like your mother? If you can't, then, well, do the best that you can. If you look through the example, the stuff on our checklist that may give you some ideas of what she did or didn't do, and that may trigger your memory. Or the other thing you can do, of course, is you can do an IFS session to help you explore. And what happens in an IFS session with an exile is you actually ask the exile to show you what happened in childhood to cause it to have the pain that it's carrying. And very often in IFS sessions, you will find out things from an exile that you didn't know, because the exile knows it, but you don't. So that's one of the advantages of doing IFS work. And in fact, if you really want to do this deeply, I would recommend, and if you can afford it, I recommend doing some sessions with an IFS therapist in addition to working the self-therapy journey to get the most out of it. But it's not necessary. People have gotten an enormous amount of self-therapy journey just on their own. Okay. I'm just reading another chat here. I think you may have answered this question. Is that an example of an inherited wound and you can't remember specific? No. An inherited wound is different. Well, actually, it could be. No, you're right. If you can't remember what happened, it could be because it was a legacy wound and because nothing happened. Or it could be that something did happen and you don't remember it. Because many of these things that happened are painful, very often we have protectors that block our memories of what happened, or that segregate the memory off into the memory of an exile, which is another way of saying that they block it. So the exile remembers it, but we don't. So it could be either. Okay, here's another one. Is anyone else wanting a buddy who's already familiar with this process? I'd like to find a buddy to share this work once or twice a month by phone or perhaps Skype. Okay. Let's see. How can I connect with you? Know what? The thing I would recommend, so Charlotte's looking for a buddy. If anybody's also, so Charlotte, what I would recommend you do is go into our online community and put out that request. That's the best way to do it. That way anybody in the community may respond to your request. And also, if anybody else on this webinar or anybody who's watching this webinar on replay is interested in connecting with Charlotte and being her buddy, please also go onto the online community, find Charlotte's request, and connect with her. Okay. So Charlotte's also asking about the need for a therapist's access code for stage 2. I'm going to get to that later. What she's referring to is that in order to do stage 2, you actually need an access code from a therapist or a counselor. You don't actually have to be working with a therapist in order to get an access code, but you do need to at least be evaluated by me or someone else. I'll talk about that later on. That's in order to make stage 2, in order to make it safe, make sure that somebody doesn't use it who could get into emotional trouble using it. But I'll explain that in more detail later on in the call. Okay, so now we're finished stage 2. If anybody else has got a comment or a question, feel free to ask in the chat. And otherwise, I'm going to go on to stage 3. And I think I'll just take another little break here and see if anybody else wants to ask anything. Okay, so going on to stage 3. Oh, no, we're not done with stage 2 yet. So notice here, I came back, when I did that, I came back, this is stage 2 follow-up, because you've done one wound here, but here are the same list of motivations and the same list of wounds, so you can now do another wound if you want, or you can even do a third or a fourth. Some people have done that. That can be really helpful to explore all the wounds that are behind your issues, and you may eventually need to explore them all. But the other thing I want to say is that don't get hung up on doing too many wounds before you go on to stages 3, 4, and 5, because it could be discouraging, because it's painful to deal with those wounds. Whereas when you get to stage 3, you start to feel more empowered and more hopeful. So if that's the case, you may want to go on to stages 3 and 4, and maybe at some point go back to stage 2 and do more wounds when you need to. Or maybe even go on to stage 5 and start doing the homework practice, and then later, if you need to, come back and do more wounds. Okay, so now, the next thing is childhood conditioning. In addition to wounds, there are other childhood things that can cause you to have a certain pattern. You could have been conditioned to that pattern because it was modeled for you by a parent. Maybe a parent was an overeater, or because you were taught to behave that way because your parents shoved food at you and told you to eat up too much, or maybe they rewarded you for eating all, sometimes mothers reward you for eating their food, and you end up feeling like you have to eat a lot and you're conditioned to eating too much. So this is a way of exploring possible conditioning that happened in childhood that caused you to have, in this case, the indulgent pattern. So here you can explore that. Here are examples of the kind of things that may have been done that conditioned you to be an overeater. Mother used food for comfort. Mother praised me for cleaning my plate. What did mother say? Eat what I give you. Go ahead, have another one. So you see there's ways of exploring maybe the conditioning from your childhood that caused you to have, in this case, indulger, but it could be any pattern. So that's a little more in stage 2. And that now finally finishes stage 2, and now we can go on to stage 3. Wow, this is taking longer than I thought. Okay, I'm going to go see if I can go a little faster here, so it doesn't take forever. So, so now in stage 3, every pattern is associated with a healthy capacity that transforms that pattern, or hopefully in your behavior and in your feelings replaces that capacity. So in the case of your indulgent pattern, the capacity would be conscious consumption, where you consume in a way that's conscious and moderate and in touch with what you actually need. In the case of food, in touch with when you're actually hungry, so you're not eating for emotional reasons, but for when you're actually hungry. You can read a story here of somebody who has this pattern. The next page, this is a list of the different aspects of conscious consumption: awareness of my body's physical needs, ability to differentiate hunger, thirst, and other needs, and so on. So you can check the different preparing healthy foods, the capacity to stay present and aware while I'm eating, and so on. So you can check off both the aspects that you already have and the ones that you want to develop are in the process of developing. And these will go into your conscious consumption report. And then just like before, there's also a part, a healthy part, that corresponds to this healthy capacity. So you can choose a name for it, an image for it. I'm going through this more quickly here. You get a report on this, and there's also a page where you can explore the kinds of situations in your life that support this healthy capacity. So that will help you to maybe be in these situations, choose these situations more frequently to help you develop this capacity. All these end up in your report, and that's the end of stage 3. So this stage is a little shorter, but you still might want to end here before you go into stage 4. But some people will do stages 3 and 4 in the same STJ setting. Okay, let's go into stage 4. Now, stage 4 gets pretty interesting because basically in stages 4 and 5, you're going to be developing a real-time practice for living from your healthy capacity instead of your pattern. In this case, living from conscious consumption rather than indulger. And so the first thing you do is to decide on a practice situation that you're going to practice doing this with. So let's say, I already wrote one in here, bedtime snacks. So let's say I choose, okay, I want to work on being more conscious about how I eat during my bedtime snack. And some of you might decide that maybe you might want to not have a bedtime snack, but that's up to you. That's what I chose. Now, you can type in some. So notice that I chose to call it the feeder. Here it is. Oh, wait a minute. I want to go back. So this looks good. I'm actually going to go back into stage 3 because I didn't choose. Let me go back into stage 3. I'm going to choose a name for the conscious consumption capacity. Let's call it Awaken Eater. And now I go back to stage 4, and I go to this next page. You will see that the practice situation I chose shows up here. The name that I chose for my pattern, the feeder, shows up here, and somewhere that the healthy capacity, there it is, Awakened Eater. So how would you like to behave in the practice situation? The Awakened Eater becomes activated instead of the feeder. So those things actually show up on the page. So you can type in here how I usually behave, how I usually do with my bedtime snacks. I can say how I'd like to behave instead, and also remember we explored in stage 1 the underlying fears or motivations for overeating, but there may be particular ones that are activated during the bedtime snack, so I can type them in here. And then down here, I have a list of, again, all the motivations that I checked off in stage 1, because these correspond to things that you can do in stage 4. Now, what you can do in stage 4 is you can negotiate with your protector pattern, in this case your indulger, to recognize that it doesn't need to do what it usually does in the practice situation. Like in this case, your bedtime snack. You can negotiate with the indulger to say, you know what, we don't really need to overeat at bedtime, because the things that you're afraid of or the things that you're trying to escape are actually not going to be a problem, or if they are, I can handle them. So, for example, one possibility is I'm afraid of being rejected if I don't eat a lot. That might be because your mother really wasn't happy if you didn't eat a lot. So you might have an issue around that, an unconscious issue. So you can say, okay, I'd like to work that through in order to help me in stage 5. So you can click here, and it will take you through a series of steps for working through the fear of, in this case, rejection, abandonment, lack of caring, or dismissal. And you can explore whether it's realistic or not, and it's usually not. Like in this case, in your bedtime snack, there's nobody around who's going to reject you if you don't eat a lot. And so you can reassure your indulger that it's not necessary. And there's ways to do that, and actually ways to explore what would happen if it was realistic. And then you can actually do a guided meditation, which is another manifest meditation where you reassure your indulger part that it doesn't need to indulge because of the fear of being rejected. That should be pretty easy to do. Now we'll return, and I'll just show you the other types of things you can do. There's also working through some, if your issue, which is a more common, if you're eating to soothe a part of you that's feeling lonely, empty, or needy, which often comes up at bedtime, that's a way of trying to escape those feelings. And so there's a working through pain escape thing that you can go through, where you actually reassure. And this, of course, is a situation where it's not a fear that something will happen if I don't overeat. It's a situation where those feelings of neediness or emptiness are probably already coming up at bedtime. And so, in this case, what you're going to do is figure out how you're going to handle those feelings. And the best way, of course, would be, remember, we worked on your needy exile. And so you hopefully already are connected to that needy exile, and you have, maybe you've already nurtured that exile, but you have the ability at the time that you're having your bedtime snack to just go briefly inside, connect with that needy exile, and nurture it a little bit, give it your love, give it your caring, and take care of it, and so that there isn't really a need for the indulger to overeat in order to get away from that pain. And you can go, and then you can do a guided meditation where you, and these are shorter meditations where you actually reassure your indulger part, or the feeder in this case, that it doesn't need to eat a lot because you've taken, you'll take care of that needy exile at the bedtime snack time. So let's return. It looks like this is going to go longer than the hour and a half I set up. So if you feel a need to leave, feel free to leave. I think I set this up as an hour and a half, or maybe it was 2 hours. Anyway, I'm going to keep going because there is going to be a recording of this. If you need to leave, you will get a link to the recording, and you can. I hope you can fast forward it to wherever you are and watch whatever part of it you didn't see. So anyway, I will go on. And now there's another option here. Sometimes people overeat in order to rebel against their food controller part. So let me just explain, and this is not just around eating. Sometimes there are inner critic parts that try to control us or try to make us do things. So the food controller is one of those, the taskmaster is another, it tries to get you to work hard, the perfectionist is another. And sometimes we have parts that actually engage in an inner rebellion against another part of it. So and that is basically related to an IFS is called a polarization, which is an inner conflict between two different parts. Excuse me, I have to kind of eat fairly frequently, so I'm having another little bite of food. By the way, this is not my indulger. I'm not overeating. I'm actually hungry. Anyway, so what you've got here is you have, and this is just an example, there are many different patterns that end up being polarized with other patterns and where you end up with an inner conflict. And so in stage 4, you have an opportunity to get in touch with what the inner conflict is, to go work on, at least do the beginning work on the other pattern. In this case, it would be the food controller, and then come back here, or maybe you've already worked on it, in which case there's a meditation here that actually takes you through a part of an IFS session where you actually work on resolving the polarization between these two parts. In this case, it's the indulger and the food controller. It could be your procrastinator and your taskmaster, or it could be many other pairs of patterns that are in conflict with each other. So there's a meditation for resolving that conflict. I will go back here, and then there's one other type of thing that happens in stage 4 fairly frequently. In case rebelling people try to control my eating, that's not an inner rebellion, that's an outer rebellion. And so that actually corresponds to the rebel pattern. So in this case, what's going on is your indulger pattern is in service of your rebel pattern. I mean, that may not be the only reason. You can see there could be other reasons why you're indulging as well. But one of the reasons for the indulging might be as a way of rebelling. So if we click here, this takes you to a page where you get to explore a little the pattern that it's in service of, in this case the rebel pattern. There's a link here where you can click to actually go work on the other pattern, because if your indulging is in service of the rebel pattern, you may not be able to completely work through your indulger pattern until you work through your rebel pattern, or you may need to work through both of them. So this gives you an opportunity to do that, and also gives you some advice about how to change your behavior instead of rebelling, how to get and how to create a plan to do that. So that, we'll go back again, and now that kind of, so these are, and you know, these are 4 different ways you could go through stage 4. For most patterns, you're not going to want to do all 4 of them, or you might actually even want to do 2 different. You know, there's working through different kinds of fear. There's working through rejection fear. There's working through pain fear, working through harm fear, working through manipulation fear, working through failure fear, and so on. So there's lots of different options. So you choose as many or as few of these as you want to do in stage 4 until you feel like you've worked it through enough that you're liable to be able to be successful in doing your practice in stage 5, and then you move on to stage 5. So I'll click here to go to stage 5, and let me just check again to see if there's any other comments or questions. This demo is very useful. I'm inspired again to continue and to go deeper with this support. You've created an amazing tool. Very well done. Thank you. Well, thank you. Great. Thank you. I love getting feedback like that. Okay. So now let's go to stage 5. So this is an opportunity to get to work on a colluding pattern if you have one before you go into stage 5. If you think you need to go into that. So let's go to actually stage 5. So what you're going to do in stage 5 now is you're going to set up a real-time practice for activating and living from the healthy capacity instead of the pattern in a particular practice situation. So remember, the situation I chose in this example is my bedtime snack, but it could be anything. Like if you were working on not being a people pleaser or not being controlling, maybe your practice situation is meetings at work. Or maybe if you're going to work on not judging yourself with your inner critic pattern, maybe your practice situation is going to be when somebody gives you when somebody else judges you, maybe that triggers your own judgment of yourself. So your practice situation might be when someone judges me. So your practice situation can either be a type of situation that you know occurs regularly, like a work meeting or a bedtime snack, or it could be a type of situation that it could occur at any moment, like somebody judging you, or somebody rejecting you, or something you were hoping for not working out the way you wanted, or meeting someone you're attracted to. It could be almost anything. So you choose your practice situation. You chose that in stage 4, and now it's whatever you do in stage 5 is related to that. To both stage 4 and stage 5 is related to that particular practice situation. So now what's tricky is the hardest thing for most people to do is to actually follow through on a real-time practice. And so my first page is to actually inspire you to do that. So here you can check off different reasons why you really would like to not be coming from this pattern in your life anymore. Or you can check off reasons why you would really love to have this healthy capacity in your life. So you check and you can add your own always. So you check those off. And then the next page is you're basically, from the rest of these pages are actually set up for you to prepare for when you're going to do the practice in real time in your life, like in this case at bedtime. So here's a chance to check off and understand how you know that your pattern's been activated. In this case, how will you know that your indulger has been activated? Like in your bedtime. Now, some of these don't apply to a bedtime snack, of course. So you'll put in whatever does. Like for a bedtime snack, I can't stop eating until it's all gone. Maybe that's what it is. Or I go, or whatever it might be. And you might need to add your own if these don't apply to your particular situation. So how will you know that you're eating too much or that you're about to eat too much? Then the next thing is you'd like to reassure your overeater in this case that it doesn't need to do its thing. So I can be with painful feelings without numbing them with food. These are the things you're going to silently, internally say to your overeater. True bliss won't come from this bite. There's plenty to eat without overdoing it. Whatever it might be. These are just some examples. You can add your own. And if there's some difficulties that might happen, if your heart is not happy with your reassurances, you might just say you're going to handle the situation if something difficult happens. That doesn't really apply here, so I'll just go on. So then now we're going to talk about actually activating conscious consumption. So there's statements you can say to yourself to activate it. I deserve to eat right. I have faith that there will be enough. When I feed myself well, I love myself. I can be conscious and present when I eat. So you check those off. And then you can also choose certain body postures or body feelings that may help you to activate this. Patience, loose hands, soft eyes, relaxed shoulders, whatever it might be. Identifying satiation, identifying when you're full. Um, and also, if there's somebody in the practice situation that could help you, you can enter who that person is, how you want help from them. So if maybe you have your bedtime snack around your partner, maybe you'll ask your partner to remind you whatever you'd like them to do to help you not overeat, or what you want them not to do. Like maybe they're nagging you about what you're eating actually causes you to eat more. So you want them to stop nagging you. So whatever it is, you put that in there. Now the next thing is your inner champion. So let me explain. An inner champion is a healthy, nurturing, caring part of you that supports you in feeling good about yourself and being yourself and living from a certain healthy capacity. And so you can develop an inner champion for each healthy capacity. In this case, you can develop a conscious consumption inner champion. You can choose a name for it here. Oh, before I get to that, there's actually a guided meditation here that applies to all your inner champions, where you can do a guided meditation to help you access. An inner champion is kind of like a cheerleader or an ideal parent, and so it can be based on people in your past, or famous people, or maybe somebody you really love from a book or a movie. You could base your inner champion on that person. So you can choose to do a guided meditation to help you access that. You can choose a name for your inner champion. You can choose an image for it, just like, because this is a part too. And then you can also choose, now this is the most important thing, you can choose the statements that you would like to have your inner champion say to you that will help you with conscious consumption. Taking care of your needs is sexy. You deserve proper attention. Whatever that might be, you can take the time to nourish yourself. You can cultivate your awareness to be present when you eat. So whatever those are, and you can add your own. In fact, yours are the best. You don't have to choose ours. Choose your own statements. What would you really like to have your inner champion say to you at bedtime, in this case? And then finally, you can click here to go to a guided meditation that actually activates this specific inner champion. And you can do that now, or you can actually even plan to do it at bedtime. And then finally, when you've done all of these, all of this preparation, you end up with a practice plan that contains everything you've checked off, all the notes you took. There can be notes on your inner champion meditation, and so on. There's not much here because I didn't check off much, but you'll probably have a lot more here in your report. And you can use this practice plan to actually guide you at bedtime in doing the practice. Or if it's related to some situation that you don't know what's going to happen and you can't actually stop and refer to a plan, then you may have to, memorize the plan. Or stop and refer to it. But you can print this plan out, or you can have it available on a tablet or a smartphone. And so all this is here to help you actually do your real-time practice when you need to. And then there are 2 more pages with a lot of detailed instructions about exactly how to do the practice. And then, in addition to that, Self-Therapy Journey not only helps you to set up the practice, it helps you to track it. So there's instructions. There's actually 3 different pages. There's a page that you can do for tracking your practice when it actually happens, or soon after it happens as you can. So there's a practice incident tracking page, so you can put in the time of the incident. So on a particular bedtime, you can type in what was the incident, that's bedtime, what triggered, statements you said. And basically, I'm not going to go through this, it'll take too long, but you basically type in all of what happened around that particular bedtime practice. Close this. And then there's also a daily tracking page. And even if bedtime only happens once a day, you think, I don't know to do the daily, but this is different. The daily tracking page is a way of kind of thinking back over the day. What happened? Did you do the practice? How did it work? So it's like reflecting on the day. And then there's also a weekly tracking page for reflecting on the entire week. And and then also deciding how well did the practice work? Is there anything I want to do differently next week so it works better? And so on. And these tracking pages are actually on your dashboard. Let me actually show you your dashboard. So if we go here to your dashboard, this is the sort of central place you go to. Once you're in Self-Therapy Journey and you start using it, this is the place you'll be brought to when you first log in. Well, you actually can go to the page that you were on when you last left. Or you can go right to your dashboard. And here you can see, over here on the lower left, you can click here, and this is a way to get in touch with all of your practice pages for all of your patterns. So if you want to indulge your practice pages, you can go here, and right here use your incident daily and weekly tracking pages. Here's your conscious consumption plan. For actually doing the practice, you can click here, and here's your tracking instructions if you want to be reminded of how to do the tracking, so you can click there. So let me go back to the dashboard. So that way, so let me just summarize. So that way, if you want, you can really help yourself. And the tracking is it's a good way to stay accountable. And it's also a good way to really think through how your practice is going so you could improve it and figure out how to make it better, how to make it more effective in actually working. Because the first time you set up your practice, it's probably not going to be perfect. You probably want to improve it in various ways. And so that's a way of doing, your tracking pages will help you to figure out how to improve your practice. But as long as we're here, let me also show you what else you can do from your dashboard. So one of the big things you can do is your pattern status and restart page. So this page has a list of all the pattern and capacity pairs. You can see they're over here on the left: angry and centered, caretaking and self-care, so on. The pair we were doing was indulge or conscious consumption. And you can see that there's a page. So I'll just do it right here. So if I click, so here is a page where I can look at my reports and practice pages. So I click here. Here's my indulger pattern report. Here's my conscious consumption report. Here's my practice plan, and here's my tracking pages. So I can get all of these here. But also, if I want to start this from the beginning, I can click here to start. But if I was in the middle of it, I can click here, and this will start me wherever I left off. This also tells me the status, like I've already started this, I've actually finished this one. If I hadn't started it, it would say that I hadn't started it, and I could click here to start. So that's how this page works. Let me go back to the dashboard again. You can also, over here, you can click here to begin exploring a new pattern or capacity. That takes you back to that page I showed you at the beginning. Here you can get to explore lists. Here you can start exploring the wound if you want to, if you don't want to start from stage 2 from the pattern. Here you can get to all your reports. Notice that so far you couldn't get to your wound reports, but here you can get to any of your reports. So here's your pattern reports, your capacity reports, your wound reports, and also there's a general report that contains things that don't correspond to any of those. Okay, well, this has been a long webinar. I see there's 8 of you who still stuck around. Thank you for sticking around. So, you know, there's a few more pages that I didn't cover that are specific to the inner critic patterns, but I think that would make this way too long, so I'm not going to do those in this webinar. So, let's go back now to the slideshow, to the slides. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Where do I want to go here? Ah, here we go. Okay, back to the slides. Oops, I'm going to have to run it in here. Okay, so, yes. So on the home page of Self Therapy Journey, there's a link at the top to testimonials. We have hundreds, I don't know, maybe probably close to 100 testimonials from different people about how much they've gotten from the Self Therapy Journey. So I encourage you to go in there and look at a few of them. But here are a few right now. Self Therapy Journey is brilliant. It's been an absolutely great experience to use it. Every time I had a thought like, what about this? There was something in the online system to handle it. And this person said the greatest benefit of Self Therapy Journey is its ability to reveal the hidden motivations behind our limiting patterns. I recommend it highly. Here's one more longer one. I was amazed with the ease of use of Self Therapy Journey and how quickly it helped to identify areas in which I was having trouble. The guided meditations helped me understand the underlying intentions behind my pattern. The homework practice turned out beautifully, allowing me to be more cooperative with others. I think this was somebody who was working on either a rebel pattern or a controlling pattern. I learned to restate confusing feelings in an accepting and loving way. I can now let go of those parts that are no longer serving me. So there's just a few examples. So I mentioned that we have an online community. You can go onto selftherapyjourney.com, and in the right-hand column, there's a link to the online community. There is where you'll have an opportunity to, it's basically forums, listservs, where you can share your insights and progress. You can ask questions and get responses not only from other people in the online community, but from Karen Locke, who is our online community manager, who knows IFS and knows Self Therapy Journey, and also from me, because I often go check the online community and respond. And also, if Karen gets, if anybody asks a question that she can't answer, or that other people are not answering, then she'll let me know, and I'll log on and answer it. So you can also learn a lot from other people sharing in the online community. And we also are now developing groups within the online community for people who are dealing with specific psychological issues. Right now we have a group for people who are dealing with people-pleasing, and also a group for people who are dealing with depression, but over time there will be many more of these specific groups who are developing. Okay, I'm getting some good feedbacks. Thank you, it was very informative. Feel free to go on. Thank you very much, this was helpful. Thank you, Jay, I feel more confident in getting started. Great. You can also find a partner in the online community to work on STJ, or a partner to work with you in doing IFS work together. You can also develop community with people who are struggling with the same issue. And you can also find support. Oh, this one, I set this up for the procrastination. I should have changed it. But you can get support for your practice. Um, you can also get support from me. So I send out a welcome email to everybody who joins, encouraging you to send me your phone number or your Skype name so I can actually call you and welcome you. And I provide personal support if you're having difficulties. I also provide more extensive coaching in how to use FTJ. And I also, my colleagues also provide telephone courses and online courses, and the ability to be evaluated for access to stage 2. I'll get to that in a moment. So self-therapy journey, as I mentioned, costs only $25 a month, incredibly cheap. And you can also try it out for 2 weeks for free. So let me now get to stage 2 access. Yeah, this is probably a good thing to do here. Okay. So stage 2, in order to get access, first of all, it's only, as you know, it's only 1/5 of self-therapy journey. But it's a useful fifth. So if you can, it would certainly be useful to have it, although many people have told me how much they've gotten from self-therapy journey without doing stage 2. But if you want to do it, and I certainly recommend it, all you need to do is be okay by a therapist or counselor who feels that it's appropriate for you, that you won't get into big emotional trouble by working on your childhood issues by yourself, or if you do get into emotional trouble, you can handle it. That's basically. So you basically just, if you're in therapy now, you basically need your therapist to go online onto self-therapy journey and request an access code for you. It doesn't cost them anything. They just need to request it. They'll get a bunch of access codes and they can give you one. Then you just go on and pop it in, and then you have access to stage 2. If you're working with a therapist currently, or if you have a past therapist who will be willing to okay you and give you an access code, you can contact them. If you don't, I'm happy to evaluate you. I've evaluated lots of people. I basically send you a questionnaire that asks the relevant questions about this. You fill it out, you send it back to me. We get online, we get on the phone or on Skype. I talk to you a little bit, ask you some questions. And in most cases, it only takes a half hour, and I can okay almost everybody. And I only charge $50 for that, because I really wanted to make this accessible to as many people as possible. If you don't want to do it with me, there are other people who volunteer to do similar things with you, who are called therapist guides. These are therapists and counselors who are familiar with self-therapy journey, who are willing to guide you in using it, and probably also willing to evaluate you for stage 2. And there's a list of them with contact information on the self-therapy journey site, so you can contact one of those people as well. So that's how you can get access to stage 2. You can do a lot without it, but it's not that hard to get access to, so I recommend it to people. Whoops, that was the end of the slideshow. Okay, so we're almost done here. So let me just pop up another. So if you're interested in doing a free trial for self-therapy journey, this is a link that goes directly to the free trial. So feel free to click on that, and you can pop right into the page where you can sign up for a free trial. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention that I didn't mention is that self-therapy journey can also be used as an adjunct to your therapy. So you can use it instead of therapy, but you can also use it as an adjunct to therapy or coaching or counseling or any other work you're doing. It's a way of enhancing your work by doing more of it on your own, or you can follow through on stuff that's come up with your therapist and go deeper on your own, or if you do some work on self-therapy journey and you get stuck or something happens, you don't know what to do, you can take it back to your therapist and they can help you with it. Or, and the other thing I should say, as long as I'm talking about that, is if that happens and you don't have a therapist, feel free to contact one of our therapist guides, or me, or my wife Bonnie, who's also an excellent IFS therapist. And you can either get some short coaching from us, or you can do a whole IFS session with us to help you get past whatever block you may have had so you can go on with your STJ work. And if you are a therapist and you're interested in possibly encouraging your clients to use self-therapy journey as a way of augmenting their work with you, as a way of going deeper with their work, or if you're a coach and you'd like to have your coaching clients to have access to this kind of therapy method, or you'd like them to have the access to stage 5. Actually, if you're a therapist or a coach, you'd like your clients to have, especially to have access to the real-time practice in stage 5 as a way of helping them to have a very structured and guided homework practice. That would be another thing where you might want to use self-therapy journey as an adjunct to your to the work you're doing with your clients. I had written a pretty extensive booklet called The Professional's Guide to Self-Therapy Journey. Now, you've probably gotten a lot of that from this webinar, but that booklet contains even more detail than in this webinar. So if you'd like to get it, here is a link to that booklet, and that you can get that for free. And this is a link to a PDF. There's also a Kindle version of it that you can get, which I think you can get on Amazon for 99 cents. I couldn't make it free, but you can get it for 99 cents. But you can also just download this PDF version of it for free. So let me go back to the chat and see. Let's see. Jane, what is stage 2? Okay, you probably came in late. Stage 2 is where you, or your client, if you're a therapist, where you work on the childhood origins behind your pattern, and you get to explore where it came from, what kind of pain or trauma your parts are holding from childhood. You get to heal the parts of you, the exiles that are carrying pain, and so on. So that's what stage 2 is. Here's another question. As a therapist myself, can I give myself a code when I'm ready for stage 2? Absolutely, yes. You can give yourself a code for stage 2. The only thing you have to be is you have to be a licensed therapist or counselor. So if you're professional but you're not licensed, you're not able to give people access to stage 2. But you might know a friend who trusts you and would be willing to take your recommendation that your clients, are okay, whichever your clients are okay for stage 2, and they might be willing to do it. So however you do it. Okay, I'm almost done, so if anybody's got any additional questions, pop them up on the chat now. I'll give you another about 20 seconds or so for your questions to come up so I can answer them before we end. So I want to say thank you to everybody who has put in questions, because I always feel like that helps to make this more useful. Oh, by the way, those of you who are listening or watching this on replay, you should be able to send me questions by email, since you obviously can't do it by chat. So feel free to do that. I will be more than happy to answer any of your questions that you have. or feel free to actually send me your phone number or your Skype name, and I'll be happy to call you and answer your questions in person. And oh, the other thing is, I would love feedback. I love to get feedback. So even if you try self-therapy journey, even if you don't need help, I would love to get your feedback. So send me your feedback in whatever form. Send it by email, however you'd like to do it. Send it directly to me. I really want to be personally there to learn about your experience and help you in anything I can. Okay, I don't seem to be getting any other questions, so I'm going to end the broadcast now. So thanks, everybody, and there are going to be many more of these webinars. Feel free to join me on a future one. Bye-bye for now.